Well, good morning, everyone. Just hit 10 o'clock, so I might get started for today. Um, go. So, yeah, thanks all for joining us and sending a warm welcome to everyone here with us today. And thank you for joining us for this Research and Evaluation Network webinar. So the theme of today is Data Presentation Best Practices, Mastering the Art of Visualizing Information. So today is the first of a three-part webinar series held over the month of September. And so it's on data visualization for community service organizations. And we have two more sessions after today's webinar. So session 2 will be on data storytelling principles. And session 3 will be on communicating impact and purpose with data. Just to note, if you have registered for one of these sessions, you will be registered for all three of the webinar series, and you'll also receive a recording of the session today. So we are a large group today with almost 200 registrations for today's event. So I'll just go through the agenda. So I'm going to give a 5-minute introduction and overview of the Research and Evaluation Network and tell you a bit more about the Community Door Research and Evaluation Resources Hub and also the new QCOSS Data Hub. I'm then going to hand it over to our guest speaker for today's event, Dave Keys, who will give the presentation on data presentation best practices. There'll be some time for some Q&A after Dave's presentation, and I'll also highlight some upcoming opportunities that you may like to get involved with. So just a couple of housekeeping things to note. By default, you will be on mute, but your camera will be turned on. This session will be recorded, so if you don't want your face shown in the recording, please feel free to turn your camera off. If during Q&A you would like to ask a question, you can write the question in the chat. And there's also a Q&A function here, but I would just suggest using the chat. The other option is you can put your hand up using the raise your hand emoji and then take yourself off mute to ask a question. And if we run out of time for the Q&A today, we can definitely follow up with you individually after the session. Just pop your question into the chat pane. So I'd like to begin by acknowledging the traditional owners and custodians of the land, the oldest living cultures in human history. I acknowledge the Yagara and Turrbal people of the lands in which I work and live here in Meanjin in Brisbane. I'd also like to pay my respects to all First Nations colleagues joining us online today. QCOSS thanks First Nations people for the gift of the Uluru Statement from the Heart, and we look forward to continuing supporting work leading to a successful referendum, which has now been announced for the 14th of October. QCOSS welcomes the invitation to walk with First Nations people in a movement of the Australian people for a better future. For those online, please feel free to join us in acknowledging country where you are today through the chat function as well. So my name is Amy Dellett, and I am the Data and Reporting Analyst in the Research and Policy team at QCOSS. I coordinate our Research and Evaluation Network webinars like these ones and our online forum, as well as providing data capability support internally to QCOSS and also externally to our members. The purpose of the Research and Evaluation Network, just a quick overview for those who may be new, and the purpose of the network is about collaboration and knowledge sharing with the intention of identifying shared challenges and emerging issues in the community services sector, which allows us to then respond and provide advice on matters relating to research and evaluation. And it's also an opportunity to share perspectives and shape the QCOSS research and evaluation agenda. So if you'd like to get in touch or provide any feedback on the network, our team's email address is research@qcoss.org.au. Just a reminder that you can also access our Research and Evaluation Network webinar recordings and resources on the Community Door Research and Evaluation Resources Hub page and our YouTube channel. So I'll just share the links in the chat pane for you to explore these resources further. Just bear with me while I add those into the chat now. There we go. So we also have a QCOSS Research and Evaluation Forum. and that sits within the Microsoft Teams platform. We currently have 81 members on the forum, and the idea behind the forum is just providing a space and an opportunity for our network members to collaborate and exchange ideas and access professional development opportunities. It's also the best way to stay up to date with news about our network and network webinars. So I've shared information on how you can join the forum in the chat. And I also wanted to let you know we now have a dedicated landing page for the data work that we do at QCOSS, and it's called the QCOSS Data Hub. At the moment, we have two main pieces of work there. So there's the Queensland Social Housing Register data dashboards and the QCOSS Town Hall community data profiles. So the Social Housing Register dashboards are interactive visualisations of the Social Housing Register for Queensland, and the dashboards were made available last year and recently updated to June 2023 data release. You can explore the time series data by clicking through the pages, filters and charts to review summary information for all of Queensland, for First Nations communities, housing service centre regions, local government authority areas and state electorates. And then the community data profiles were also recently released to our website, and these were collated for our QCOSS town halls, which are held from August to October 2023 across a number of regions in Queensland, and are also available for other additional regions of interest, informed by feedback received from our sector. So the profiles provide an overview of selected indicators that align with QCOSS policy focus areas of housing, youth justice, living affordability, women's equality, children, young people, and community services. So that was actually the last slide from me. It's now my pleasure to introduce our guest speaker for today's event, David Keys, founder and director of Key Data here in Brisbane. Dave is one of Australia's foremost experts in data analytics, including the use of Tableau, Lavastorm, Alteryx, Cognos, Business Objects, and many other tools. An experienced data architect, technical lead, and project manager, Dave is passionate about solutions that use previously untapped information assets to drive business improvement. Dave's early career included industrial engineering, production management, and operations management. It was in these roles that Dave realised the transformative power of data, and Dave is also host for the Brisbane Tableau user group. I had the pleasure of meeting Dave when I was embarking on my own data visualisation journey about 5 years ago, and he delivered a few of the courses that I attended when I was learning Tableau at the time. And so Key Data is a formal Tableau partner here in Brisbane and provide a wealth of support to the data community. I personally love attending the user groups. I think they're a really great way to connect with other people working with data, particularly for data analysts in small not-for-profit organisations, where there may be like 1 or 2 people doing data visualisation work within the organisation. It's really great to have the opportunity to learn from others doing similar work, and the meetings are often recorded too. So if you can't attend in person, I recommend watching them online, the recording. At the end of Dave's presentation, we'll have some time for some Q&A. And so I will now hand it over to Dave. Welcome. Thank you very much for joining us. It's really lovely to have you here with us today. Thanks for taking time on your busy Friday schedule. And I'll hand it over to you to share all your insights on data presentation best practices. Thanks,
Thank
Dave.
you, Amy. Thank you, Amy. I really applaud getting these things set up too. This is community stuff. Get as much as we can out and get people on the journey. It's amazing. And as you mentioned, the user groups are amazing. I'll come back to those later, so I might just jump in and get going. Great to see so many people interested in this topic. I find typically this topic, after people learn the basic skills in Tableau or Power BI, that this is what lifts them up to another level. Understanding how to present the data makes such a big difference. So this is really a 2-day course condensed into less than an hour. We're not going to cover everything in that course. The other thing I've mentioned here is this is not Tableau specific. The principles we're doing here today, my background is Tableau, admittedly, so I've used Tableau to build some of the examples I'm using. But the same things apply equally to Power BI or any of the other tools that you might be using in the same space. So really what I'll be doing here, I've been in this space for scary. You can see my hair, and I had hair when I started in this space. So things have, I've been around for a while. But this is really a combination of lessons from a multitude of people, but the two I lean on most heavily are Stephen Few and Edward Tufte. I like their approach. I like what they're doing. It's very minimalist. It's very clean. That's blended with 20 years of real world experience. And I've been teaching this subject now for, I think it's about 9 years. So here we go. So agenda for today, principles for data presentation. Why are we building the presentation? Until we've defined that, it's very difficult to really get on the right line about the presentation we're building. We also need to understand who our audience is. Then I'm going to jump in and start talking about the way our brain works. Most of you are probably aware that certain charts are better than other charts at answering specific types of questions. So I'll be going through having a bit of a look at the way we can build our visualization, our dashboards, on the basis of our brain and the visual design principles we're using. So dashboard layout and sequencing, the way our memory works. Many people aren't aware of the way our memory works when it comes to looking at a dashboard and the processing that's going on up here. And that all influences heavily the chart types we might be using. Then, to be honest, in the 2-day course, we put quite a bit of time into looking at different chart types. Here, I'm going to lead you through more of a set of checklists and some traps to be aware of, because we don't have time to go through all of that, but I do have a cheat sheet for getting into that. So I'll be talking about cognitive load, colour blindness, data versus non-data ink, which is central to what both Stephen Few and Edward Tufte talk about. Backgrounds, colour and shape, informing without misleading. It's very easy to make charts that are inadvertently telling the wrong stories. The last bit, and the bit that I'd suggest everyone can get the most from, is the online and community resources that are available. They really are quite amazing. So we'll touch on those towards the end. First one though, why are we building our dashboard? This is a Tableau dashboard. This is on Tableau Public. And we've got the Mona Lisa on the left, and on the right, you can see I've made a couple of subtle adjustments, and that's made some changes. But this is not about a dashboard for business purposes. This is art, and it's very different than what we might be doing for other outcomes. We also might be doing infographics or information, but not necessarily expecting actions coming out of those visualizations. So that's the second one we should be really aware of. This one here is one that Key Data are also doing as a service, which is called Track and Act. Trackandact.com if you want to have a look. We use little Internet of Things devices, and they track produce or fridges or various things, either in situ in a pharmacy, for example, or tracking the temperature and alerting people when temperatures go maybe not where they should be. So we can have clip levels on those and give automated alerts instantly when things go outside the range. Here you can see too hot, too cold, and there's also a bit of data science going on here, which is estimating the shelf life remaining on whatever the produce is. So this one is very much targeted around getting actions coming out of what the dashboard's telling. This one in this case is transporting mangoes from a farm in North Queensland to the airport and then via air over to South Korea, and it eventually winds up in Busan. And we can go through and understand what's happening at any stage during that journey. So I thought I'd touch on a definition. What is a dashboard? And this is really a dashboard that is for the business purpose, not for the prior to that I mentioned. I like this definition by Stephen Few: a visual display of the most important information needed to achieve one or more objective. that has been consolidated on a single computer screen so it can be monitored and understood at a glance. I've highlighted a few words in that because I think they're very important. We must understand those objectives. Stephen's got a particular displeasure when he sees dashboards that involve scrolling. I agree with that. I'd rather get to the end of a single page, and if I need more detail, it's so easy to open up a second dashboard with the detail pre-filtered so that you can carry on with your journey. And the last bit, really getting it so it's at a glance. And that's what a lot of this is about, the at a glance bit. Understanding how we can minimize that time to someone being there and answering the question as opposed to scratching their head while they're looking at it. So the first thing we've got to really do is set the purpose. And if I was to give one single tip that makes a difference to most dashboards I see, look at the titles, both for the dashboard and for the individual charts. That sets the scene so that when someone's looking at a dashboard, they automatically are in the context of what that dashboard's about. And titles, I've got a few examples coming up, but for the dashboard, think about a short sentence that gives the intent and purpose of the dashboard. You may have 3 or 4 charts on that dashboard as well, and they may have smaller titles, but they're specific business questions or questions in the context of your organisation. So short, sharp, as few words as you can get that just put people in the scene for what that dashboard is doing or what that individual viz within that dashboard is doing. You also need to be aware of a few other things. Who wants the answer? Is this for the CEO? Is it for someone that's looking after logistics? They've probably got very different purposes and they've probably got very different expectations. What's their language? One of the things we tend to do at Key Data when we get in with companies, we run these what's called model storming sessions, and they allow us to get an understanding of what's going on with the client, with their business processes, and not more importantly, but equally importantly, to understand the business language that's being used. So that then when we're building dashboards, we're building them in tune with the language that's being used by the business. How will those answers be used? How often does the answer change? If we've got a 12-monthly refresh dashboard, we may approach that in a different way to one that's being live alerts. If it's something that everyone's in every day, there may be a different approach to the way we're building up how you use the dashboard. But equally, do we need real-time alerts or notifications? And that can be quite different as well. These are all considerations that come into the way that you build your dashboard. Here I've got a viz that I've just put this one up. This is by a fellow, for those that, there may be a few people on the call that came along to the last Brisbane Tableau user group. We're very lucky. We've got a guy that lives on the Gold Coast, Paul Ross is his name. For anyone that's aware of IronViz, this is probably the visualisation competition that occurs every year. It's the biggest one in the world, effectively. And it's quite intense in that you qualify. There's one person from APAC, one person from Americas, and one person from Europe. And they're stuck up on a stage. This time, this is after COVID, so the crowds were a bit reduced. They built their dashboards in front of Paul built this one in front of 8,000 people live in 20 minutes. It's like being at a rock concert. The noise is deafening, just incredible. There are links to the YouTube clip. Actually, I don't have them on here, but you can go and open up the visualization itself. Let me see. Pull this over here. And that's his visualization. I won't go right through it at the moment, but that was more just so you could see. The link can open it up. I think Amy might be dropping it in the chat window. So if I narrowed what I've said so far down to the biggest single tip I can almost give for most people. Get your titles as clear as you can. If you don't have titles or your titles are unclear, it's like the guy on the left here. So he's someone that's stumbling around trying to figure out what he should be doing and where he should be going because he's effectively in a dark room. Once you get the titles correct and targeted enough, it's very clear what they're supposed to be doing. That doesn't mean they've finished the analysis within the 15 seconds I'm talking about, but within sitting down, and I should mention, one of the exercises I like to do when I'm building a new dashboard, I'll take my dashboard and I'll stick it in front of someone, I'll watch their face. And if you give someone a confusing dashboard, you can see on their face there's a bit of confusion going on. When you get it to a stage where within 15 seconds, you can see that that confusion's gone, there's almost a look comes on their face that says, I understand why I'm here, I understand what I'm here to do. I might not have finished it yet, but I'm comfortable with the context of where we're going. Titles are the biggest single thing that make that difference. There's also this concept of layout and sequencing. And again, I will bring this one up because this one's such a good little viz. This appeared on Viz of the Day, I think it was about a week ago. And this has some titles, yeah, great, but really the thing here is the sequencing. And I might just reduce the size of that a little bit. So if I click on one of these, see the way it's redrawing the visualization, it's putting that nice yellow line and telling me what to look at next. Just very clear. I understand how to use it. I can see that grey states, no universities with data analytics programs, the yellow ones, click on any of them and it tells me the results of what that university is doing. So that'll update as I go through those, I think. Okay, so the next one. Now, there was a lot of study done at one stage by Tableau. There's an amazing amount of science that goes into all of this stuff. I went to I think it was the 2014 Tableau conference in Las Vegas. And what they did was they set up these dashboards. They had a series of areas you could have a look at these dashboards. You put these goggles on, and the goggles are tracking where your eyes are going. So the real takeaways they took away from that are, and I'll just summarize them, won't go right through all of them. Most people tend to, all other things being equal, most people will tend to read, and Stephen Pugh actually makes the same point, most people tend to read dashboards starting at the top left, going across, top left, going across, then down, across, then down, across. That does get influenced by certain things you can do, your layout and sequencing, for example. That will influence the order that people are looking at the dashboard in. Sorry, I've got mouse scroll fever. And really the focus is on that first bit at the top left. Tell your marketing department the company logo does not go at the top left. It's better, and Stephen Pugh actively argues this, it should be at the bottom right. That's where typically you'll get the least eye traffic. Now, the other thing that goes on, if you have legends placed, they should be placed strategically near the visualization that they look at. Otherwise, you wind up with eyes traveling all that. Say there's a legend over here and someone's traveling to see because they need to have a look at a shape or a color and understand what it means. Try and get your legend so they're near the visualization. It's about minimizing that eye traffic. Think about the graphic design and sequencing. Try and get things so that they're in a logical structure. This is not necessarily the structure you'd use, but it's really think about things in terms of blocks and grids and how you can get them. A common practice, is put a title at the top, and you have your KPIs also as big numbers sitting along the top as well. They draw attention to the most important bits of information, and then you can have those almost feeding into what charts relate to the information that's going on from those. Another really quick, or this is another one of the big tips I'd give. When you're designing your dashboard, don't do it in Tableau, don't do it in Power BI, don't do it in your tool of choice. Do it on a whiteboard. There's a very strong bit of logic behind that. Really what you're thinking about is the question you're trying to answer, not how to get this chart to do a specific thing. You need to be free thinking while you're going through thinking about what the dashboard might look like and how it's going to answer the specific questions. So in this is an example of a dashboard I did in one of the visual analytics classes. This turned into a dashboard that's in Tableau. What is the question for the dashboard? And this is based around Global Superstore, which is the sample data set that comes with Tableau. Think of Officeworks. So how do we improve profits? That's the prime title. So that's the intent of the dashboard. Can we get this so it's going to help us to improve profits? Then I tend to go through and ask, what are the questions, specific questions that we might be wanting to answer in order to do that? And these are just some examples of those. They're examples. It may change, and the more times you go through it, the more derivatives of that you'll get. So we might go through then and put up our KPIs along the top. Think about the charts that we're going to do, and they should be matched to a question. So think of a question. Where do we then expect people to go? What's the question for that bit? Then where do we expect them to go, and so on? It's very much journey. If we get to the stage where we're looking, I'm a big fan of scatter charts. We may get to something where we've got outliers that really need some more attention. These are where, rather than scrolling down, we might go to a separate dashboard that gives us more information, very detailed information about those specific outliers. The other thing I'd mention here, this looks as though I'm talking about the chart types already. I am, but ignore that for the moment. I'll come back to that one. A couple of other tips when you're thinking about the design of the dashboard. I'm a huge fan of these info icons, and you can build them so that you can have, when you hover over it, it gives you such good information. We minimize the amount of text on the dashboard itself. Short story, I went along to one of Stephen Few's courses in Melbourne. This is probably about 10 years ago now. In fact, it is 10 years ago. It's the same year I started Key Data. And I showed Stephen one of my dashboards I was really happy with. It was around dragon boating, and I'd been to the Club Crew World Championships and we'd managed to get a few medals at that. So I was pretty happy, and I built this dashboard getting rather excited, and I showed it to Stephen and said, "Oh, pretty good, huh? What do you think?" It's terrible. And I learned so much from the feedback that I got from him. He talked about there's way too much text, I've lost interest before I even go anywhere. And that was one of the learning lessons for me. Have these info icons. You can put the text when you hover over that, rather than having something here talking about disclaimers and all of that sort of jazz. Minimize the text, get the engagement with the visualizations. The other one that's really useful, and Tableau now have these hidden containers. I know Power BI do something similar. We can have hamburger bars that allow us to hide or show up what might be all of our filters and legends and maybe some other information that we want to have there as well. So moving on to the way our brain perceives the data. These are all, really the main thing is keep it simple. If you put in front of someone a complex dashboard, They're going to be like that guy we saw in that slide a while ago with the mask over his eyes. People lose interest when they've got to sit there thinking and interpreting about things. All of these attributes that you can see here, we've got length. It's very easy. There's no thinking required for any of these. This is what's called, that length thing is what's called sensory perception. Think about when you walk into a room and it's cold, or it's full of mega bright blue walls, and the only thing you notice is it's cold or there's blue walls. That stuff takes no thinking whatsoever. These are things that take no thinking. Then think about if you're doing a pie chart, for example. A pie chart is not the same as this. A pie chart is far more complex than this for the human brain to be able to analyze and interpret. Because really a pie chart is a combination of angles, width or size, and color. So instead of doing one attribute, we're interpreting three and we're layering them on top of each other. It's much more complex for the human brain to get to work around. So the best way of doing this is to keep it as simple as possible. The other mention here quickly is if you are using shapes and colors, the human brain's got a limit for using that sensory perception. For most people, it's about 6 or 7 colors or 6 or 7 shapes. So don't go putting in 10 or 20 shapes or colors. Most of the time, you'll get far better impact out of limiting it to 6 or 7. I've got a quiz for you now because I've got 4 charts here. Amy, what we might do, it'd be great if people could put in the chat. I'll just give a few seconds. I'll show each chart individually. Don't be shy. Just put in the chat the color that you think is the largest. So I'm just going to go through. First one. What is the largest color? We've got orange, green, blue, let's call it brown, pink, yellow, grey. Next. Thank you for being so active in there. Pie chart. Which one is the largest? You can see we're getting a few different opinions there. That's the point. Your brain is working trying to interpret which one is the largest. Pre-map. Just realized we should have put something to help differentiate them. And then I'll go for the last one. This is the same data for all of these. There is no difference in the data being used for the 4 visualizations. Which one is the largest one? And it's pretty obvious. If you compare the 4 together, how easy it is. This one is just using the length attribute. There is color there as well, but that's how we can put in the chat window which one we think is biggest. There's far less interpretation for our brain based on the bar chart. If you think bar charts are boring, when it comes up, there's a lot of variations on bar charts. They're not necessarily as boring as you might think they are. They're a very effective way of communicating. I'm only really going to go into bar charts here, this type of chart here, because I've got a cheat sheet for you. So this one is pulled together. It's called the Tableau Public Visual Vocabulary on Tableau Public. And by the way, if you're using Power BI, doesn't matter. you can still use this for designing Power BI. So if you've got questions that are based around deviation or correlation, ranking, this is where, oh, my screen's just done something crazy. Sorry guys, just give me a sec. Yep. This is where you can go and have a look at examples for these. Most business questions relate to one of these topics. What's the ratio of products we're selling? What's the ratio of people with this disease? What's the, there might be spatial, there might be distributions. Do we have a normal distribution and so on? And each of these can go through, and these tabs up here, I'll try and increase the size here a little bit. These give examples of different types of charts that are effective for those types of questions. If you do the course that I'm basing this on, we spend a lot of time on the different types of questions and different charts that are suitable for it. But there's a lot of examples in here. There's a link to that one. And if you go into Tableau Public generally, there's a lot of similar examples where it's one of the best sources for getting ideas for doing your different visualizations. Other tips. So this is a good example of cognitive overload. There's way too much going on, too many colors. You can see we've gone well over the 6 or 7 we're talking about. It's really just a big mess of what's going on. It's not something that people are going to sit there and say, do I mouse over one of these or whatever? They'll lose interest very quickly. Another example of the same thing that's slightly worse is this one, because this one's doing both shape and color. And I can see with some of the faces, and that's why I love the live classes, there's some faces that are just looking like, oh, that's terrible. And they're right. Live classes, you can see, okay, we'll put a visualization up. How long before those faces get back to normal? It's amazing how much of a difference that makes. Be colorblind aware. There's some great tools available for this. I tend to use Color Oracle. And really what they do is, you can see up here on the top chart, red and green. Down here, that red and that green are almost identical. This is what a colorblind, the most common type of colorblind person sees. Now, that most common type of colorblind person is roughly 10% of the male population, regardless of which origin you're from, whether it's Asian or Aboriginal or Caucasian or any other mix, roughly 10%. So it's so worthwhile using color-friendly palettes. It makes a massive difference. If you've got a crowd of 100 people, if you've got a crowd of 100 people, chances are 5 of those people, and it's half men and half women, 5 people will be seeing this, not this. It does make a difference. Now I'm going to show this little one because you've seen the way I was talking about cognitive overload. Both Stephen Pugh and Edward Tufte talk strongly about non-data ink, get rid of it. So this is a very quick example of doing that, starting from here, going to here. Just watch the journey. It's very quick. And just see how much simpler it is as you're going through. Thank you, Mubashir. Great to see you online. Oop, I think we're there. Okay, moving on. Okay, quick question. Is this grey darker than this grey? Yes or no? So it certainly looks darker. but it's not. Those two greys are identical. If you want to test that, compare that grey to that grey and compare that grey to that grey. Similar on this side, compare that grey there and there. Now look at these greys going across with a consistent background. These greys, that thick black outline helps to break away from it. How many people do you know that love to have a nice image in the background on their dashboard? It's actually a bad practice. So avoid putting images and transient backgrounds on your dashboards. They don't help the story. Color and shape, just a couple of quick mentions here. More often than not, corporate colors aren't necessarily built for the best visualizations. So don't automatically go for the corporate colors. Most really good websites that I see only have 2 or 3 colors, quite often including white. And what you're doing, typically, so this one, or the blue one over here, they're using blue as a highlight. Really, colour should not be there. Throwing more colour at a dashboard is not necessarily helping the story. You want to use colour for highlights to get people to notice specific things and to draw their attention. So limit it to, say, 2 colours or 3 colours for the general stuff. And then you might have a particular colour you're using for highlighting good or not good, or whatever it is you need to highlight. Less colours are more. Informing without misleading. So I've got a couple of examples, and these are just very quick ones. This one here, this looks like some sort of a trend chart. So if I look at that without trying to get too into the axes and labels, I'll be saying, okay, well, it's a bit chaotic, it's all over the shop, but it does appear to be increasing. So there's some sort of a trend going on. Truth is, this is sales by alphabetical city. Because we're using this type of chart, it's quite misleading. And if we change it just to a bar chart, there's a different, we're not looking for the trend in quite the same way. The other thing I'd mention there is, for me at least, if I was doing this chart, I'd probably flip it around and run the bars across so I don't have to put my head on its side to read the labels. So much of it's about making things just user-friendly. So this is 100-meter world record for sprints. So how quick can we run? You can see the amazing progress we've made. So my expectation based on this chart is that within about the next 10 years, we're going to get down to 3 seconds for 100 meters. Anyone agree? Maybe not, because this chart's misleading. See the axis here, it starts at 9.5 and goes up to 10.6. If I put that on a normalized chart where we've got 0 at the bottom, you get a very different perspective. Sometimes bringing things down so you can increase that can be misleading as well. Now, over here, I've got a mention of the Gestalt Principles. Gestalt Principles are really something that says our mind, the way that our mind works, we are logical people. We have a tendency to look for patterns and relationships and make assumptions about them without necessarily always testing them strongly. So that's what Gestalt's about, and this is a great example of that. Okay, so that's the learning part that I've been talking about. Now I'm just going to quickly get into some of the other stuff. I want to do more. I want to take this further. The stuff I'm going to be pointing out to you, 80% of it's free. The 20% of it that I point out that cost money is very worthwhile, but the 80% that's free is amazing. Take advantage of it. I've got here 3 books that I believe are particularly worthwhile. This one is, and I've put links below 2 of those books. So I'll quickly go to the Big Book of Dashboards. That's a website. It's by 3 particular authors. I'll just give a quick mention on who they are. Steve Wexler, he's a specialist around survey data. If you're looking to pull together, if anyone's tried to do visualizations around surveys, it's hard work. If you don't know how to go about it, this is the guy that wrote the book, more or less, on doing that. Jeffrey Schaefer is more of a data scientist. He's got some amazing stuff that he's pulled together just on different visualizations to answer different types of questions. Andy Cotgrave works for Tableau. He has just changed title, I think, rather than role. He's been the Tableau evangelist, and he's an amazing guy. If anyone, there's a Tableau Public, or sorry, a Tableau Public user group coming up in Sydney called Visit, and Andy will be there at that. He's an amazing guy, great stories, bit of a magician, and loves showing off little tricks, but he's very engaging. The other thing I'd mention here, and the reason I put this one up is, if you buy the book, then you'll find that it's structured in such a way that it's got different chapters that relate to different industries and dashboards that are useful for those industries. In here, you can go through and you can have a look at dashboards that are built for those industries. More often than not, you can download the dashboard and open it up and have a look at it as well. So these are great starters. The other one I've got mentioned there, Perceptual Edge, that's Stephen Fuse. He amazes me a bit because for a guy that's supposed to be the expert on visual design, he's got probably the most boring website on the planet, but it's got some amazing content on it. So if you go to the library, he's got a heap of books. They are excellent books, but if you scroll down past them, the number of articles, they're getting a bit dated now, but they're still a great starting point and great education. Really, really good resource. And Edward Tufte's book, it's just a good book. So Tableau Public, this is one of the most valuable tools for anyone. It doesn't matter whether you're on Tableau, Power BI, Business Objects, Cognos, the ideas you get from this. I was in Kuala Lumpur teaching a class, and at the beginning of most classes, I've got a little trick I use where I run around on a whiteboard and say, what is your favourite thing to do outside work? And I had one lady say, she was probably mid-20s, which surprised me, My Little Pony. I did not expect, and I'll go and have a look and see if I can find a dashboard based on the topic they give. I didn't expect to find a My Little Pony dashboard, and yet here, if you want to understand how many of the little ponies fly or do not, oh, sorry, they're the ones that don't fly, they're the ones that do fly. My Little Pony dashboard. Very quickly, Tableau Public, other things to be aware of. Viz of the day, so worth subscribing. That way you'll get an email on a daily basis. These are the last few. Sorry, this is the one for today. You'll get an email appear in your mailbox, and if you like it, click on it. 9 times out of 10, you can go and open up the visualization and download it, pull it apart, and see how they've built it. This is worth its weight in gold. Other things there, and I know I've got some slides, but I'm also getting a bit shy on time, so I'm just going to speed up a little bit. If you go in here, you'll find that there's different sections down here where you can go through time series by analysis, learning Tableau news and events. There's different industries where you can go and have a look at dedicated dashboards for that industry. This is ideas. This is doing a bit of research. How can I come up with good ideas? Okay, where are we? Visit the day, so I've mentioned that quickly. Make sure you hit the subscribe button. It's so worthwhile. Tableau Community. On that Tableau Public that we were just looking at, there's over 7 million dashboards. So there's a lot to consume. And that's why I got a My Little Pony dashboard. The events, the Tableau and Power BI user groups are so worthwhile. These are not sales events. They're very deliberately not sales events. You come along, there's free pizza and beer or something similar, and you listen to other data geeks talking about what they love doing and showing off their work. They're amazing. So worthwhile, whether it's Tableau or Power BI, get in there. Tableau Public, I've spent enough time on that. We're coming towards the end. There is a similar tool to Tableau Public that is the Power BI Community galleries. I mentioned before, I'm really more of a Tableau person than a Power BI. I like them both. I actually think Power BI is a good tool. I just don't think it's quite as good as Tableau. And their version of Tableau Public is nowhere near as good as Tableau's. But that'll keep loading. The link is there. Oh, there we go. So you've got a data stories gallery. These are Power BI. So there is a similar facility. Free learning, and these are both incredibly valuable, incredibly valuable. After you've learned how to become technically proficient on Tableau or Power BI, doesn't matter which one, Makeover Monday is run by the guy that built that chart catalogue that I showed earlier. Andy Kriebel's his name, and his partner, Eva, oh, good grief, mental blank. Eva Braun. No, not Eva Braun. I'll think of it in a second. I should know better because Eva and I learned to teach Tableau together. Anyway, they do an amazing job on here. And essentially on a Monday, you'll get a data set along with everyone. They both work the same way, by the way. You'll get a data set. It'll be a predetermined data set. And you've got a week to go and build your visualization. Everyone else does too. Then you post it up on Tableau Public with the hashtag Makeover Monday week 23 or whatever week it is. And you can see what other people have done with the same data set. It's about building your visual experience and getting the creativity going. It is so worthwhile. Workout Wednesday is a little more friendly for Power BI. It has Tableau and Power BI focus, whereas this one's really just posting up onto Tableau Public. They're both incredibly valuable. The one other thing I'd say, Makeover Monday has slightly more topical data sets. So the voice, the referendum, that sort of thing. Whereas you'll find Workout Wednesday tends to be a little more business related. Lastly, visual analytics classes. I know the font is a little small there. Really, this is the sort of thing we've been going through here. It's a 2-day class, and that shows some of the content that we cover in that class, so the different chart types, getting an understanding of how the brain works and so on. Very worthwhile 2 days. If you can, do it in a live classroom. Salesforce and Tableau are doing it online most of the time. It's nowhere near, I'd suggest it's twice as valuable to do it in a room where you can see other people's faces. We can help coordinate that for Brisbane. If you're interested in that, then get in touch with us and we'll help to organise live classes in Brisbane. We can potentially do it in other cities if there's enough people, but it's a very worthwhile class. I'll also make mention that, look, this is where I see the lift in most people going from someone that can build a dashboard to someone that can build a really good dashboard. And it's not technical in any way, shape or form. It's just about visualization and perception and the way the brain works. And with that, last thing I'd probably mention there is key data. We're here to help. If you need any help, On our website, we've got a variety of different things we can help with, but just, you know, just put a very quick summary there of some of the things we do. It's including those things, more than happy to help, and we're very flexible, we're very transparent in the way we do things. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Dave. We had a question come through earlier from Courtney, actually, and it's a pretty good one. She was asking, so how accessible is the hover over text to show options? So, you know, the tool, I think it's called a toolbox. It's when you hover over something and that shows the text box of the information. So how accessible is that? And is it picked up by screen readers, or do you need to use the alt text, the information in the dashboard?
I'm afraid it's not very alt text friendly. There is no alt text. That may change in the future. I know Tableau puts a lot of focus on that sort of thing, but the technology is not there now. It's pretty quick and easy to do when you know how. In Tableau, at least. On Power BI, I can't really talk to that. We do have quite a few people in our company that are very Power BI strong, and if you need help with that, then please shout out.
Great, thank you. Yeah, I was wondering the same thing. So great. Thanks, Courtney, for asking the question. Is there anyone else online that has a question, a burning question? I know we're running out of time quite quickly, but we're happy to take questions offline as well. Probably just have time for one question, if anyone wants to take themselves off mute. No? I had a question. I'll ask all the tricky ones, Dave. So, you know, when you were talking about the axis and you have the y-axis, and so you showed the example of when it was just, you know, there was a range of about 5, I think it was the running example, and then you changed it to the 0 axis. So we've got an example where we've got like a side-by-side chart, and you're wanting to compare. So one chart has like really high numbers or high rates, and then the next chart next to it has a small count or a small rate, which is fine. So, you know, when you're comparing it side by side, you're wanting to show the difference, like visually compare. So one's big and one's small. But then when you introduce like a filter, so for example, when you're wanting to make it dynamic and compare between regions, all of a sudden you've got like a small region and a big region. And so I hope I'm making this make sense. So when you apply a filter, like a drop down to change between regions, I've found that you need to make then the axis dynamic so that it accounts for those variations between or across regions. But then when you're making the axis dynamic, you all of a sudden lose that comparability of when you're comparing, you know, the small counts and the big counts. I don't know if you have like a tip around that, like it, because when you change it to make it dynamic, it's then it becomes quite misleading comparing the two charts next to each other. Have you found that to be an issue as well?
Yeah, it can be. It can be, and I will be honest. Sometimes there may be different chart types that may work better for that. I'd probably want to see an example of the issue in front of me to work through what the best way of doing it is. But I think one of the things I'd mention there is this is where Tableau Public and the Viz of the Day can be so good. I've seen something similar to that on one of the Viz of the Days. And because I've seen that, and it might have been a year or 2 years ago, that'd give me a starting point where to go and have a look for that sort of and that's why it's so powerful. I've just been living on Viz the Day, but I've got so many years of experience seeing different visualizations, and sometimes I'll see something with one industry or organization and get a different question from someone else that I think, okay, well, I saw that being done a different way over here. How can I adjust that to do this? So I'm not sure that's answering your exact question, but more mechanisms you can use to find answers to it. it's the sort of thing I'd really want to have it in front of me to be able to answer
of
it properly.
course.
Sorry.
Yeah, absolutely. It's hard to explain too. There was one more question as well around, can Tableau link with data collected in MS 365 applications?
Yes. Yes, very
Okay.
comfortably. Applications, if you're talking about Excel and that sort of thing, it can do that directly from your C drive or from SharePoint or any of the others. It's actually, there's not a lot that Tableau can't connect to.
Wonderful.
And there's a couple of tools available where you can build your own connectors if need be. One of the other things I'd mention, we've actually started with Key Data. We have a partnership with Fivetran that when you're getting something that's really hard to ingest, it's just an amazing tool for doing that. And there's a few others around too, Stitch and whatever. Sometimes it's worth the investment to get something that specializes in ingestion, and then you can focus on doing visualizations.
Wonderful. Oh, thank you. There's always so much to learn. So I just have a couple more things to go through. I think we've run out of time for questions. Can see people needing to duck off to other meetings and things like that. So I just wanted to say thank you very much for being so generous with your time and sharing your knowledge on this topic. And yeah, we really appreciate your enthusiasm to share and connect with our network. So we look forward to everything from Key Data in the future. And I just wanted to also share some upcoming opportunities that people might want to get involved with if they're happy to stay online for a couple more minutes. So I'll share these in the chat with you now if you have to run off, everyone. So I'll just share this now. So I just wanted to share that there's a Data Catalyst Network, which is a national group supported by Info Exchange and the Paul Ramsey Foundation. And it's specifically designed for the not-for-profit sector. And one component of the work is around data capability and a community of practice. So they often host webinars quite similar to the ones that we do as well. So I'd encourage everyone to engage with that network as well. We also have our next webinar for this topic, the next part in the 3-part series, which is on the 13th of September on storytelling principles. And then we'll have the last session on the 25th of September, where we'll hear from community services themselves around communicating impact and purpose with data. And then further on the horizon for October, we've got a couple of sessions on qualitative research methodologies. And then in November, we'll have a session on evaluating collaboration and partnerships. And lastly, I just wanted to also mention our town halls at the moment. So these events are being held, have been held over the last few years at various locations across Queensland with the sector. And in these sessions, we talk about the emerging issues and community priorities. And it's an opportunity to engage with the work of QCOSS and inform our research and advocacy work for the year ahead. So our town halls are the basis of our Queensland budget submission. And personally, I really like these sessions. We've got one in Brisbane next week. They're one of my favourite QCOSS events because we get to meet face to face with our community and the sector, and also really enjoy them because they have a data component to this work where we showcase our community data profiles. So like I said, there's some few more coming in the next few weeks. And yeah, just wanted to say thank you all for joining us. We've got some polls that we've showing up on the screen now. Please feel free to continue to connect with us around data visualization. Happy to continue this conversation further online on our forum. If you can complete the polls, that would be really much appreciated. And I hope everyone has a wonderful weekend. And thanks again for joining and connecting with us for Friday. And we'll see you in a couple of weeks' time for the data storytelling webinar. Thanks, everyone. I'll leave those polls up for a couple of minutes and then we'll say goodbye. Thank you so much, Dave. Hopefully I'll see you at a user group again soon.
Absolute pleasure. Thank you for inviting me. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Have a nice weekend.